Hello, I'm Battlescar1313, and today we're going to go over my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth review. I'm going to go over how the flow of the game goes, how the story goes, battle mechanics, trophies, mini games, and surprises. So, starting out, it was real easy. You had Sephiroth, you could skip the calm flashback in the beginning, which was like a token because a lot of people didn't like the calm flashback in the original because it just took a long time and you never gained experience for it, no items, nothing. But in this one, you could play a Sephiroth, which is nice. They should have kind of kept him as a permanent character, something like New Game Plus or DLC. I mean, he's totally playable. But I can see they don't want to add syringy spells for every character to link with. Story, nothing was bad. It was all at a point to where you could understand that the characters are on an adventure. That despite anything, they're gonna be positive about it, even in the most dire situations. Or it just seems that they're more acceptable than remake. In my eyes, they did the best thing they could, and I think that some of the emotions that the characters feel during the game, it is what's missing in some society, like the acceptance and stuff that they give each other, even through like thick and thin. It's what an RPG is supposed to be like. You play the role, you learn how to be a person, you move on. Like, and that was in Seven Rebirth. So the story is excellent, but it's like they took the greatest game of all time and remade the greatest game of all time. This game, when you get in the grasslands, there's several trophies you can just pop up right away, and they're easy to do. Like, leveling materia was not as hard in this game as it was in remake or even OG. So once you know what spells and stuff you can buy at the store, you can see what materia you're linked or limited to. Yeah, it's because as much as we want, there's only a certain amount of materia in the game for, like, let me think if I can think one. Like, there's a limited amount of enemy skill in the game. There's several stuff that you can't buy in the store, and you might be able to reduce all the side quests and get more. I just haven't really explored that much, but because it's limited, you get a moment where you have to prioritize your materia, and the materia is done good, except for, I would say that, like, I miss how once you master the materia, it would be creating a brand new materia, and I know that they couldn't do that in remake and still keep it challenging and stuff, but I kind of miss that unlimited freedom. And it even mentions some typos they have in remake and rebirth so far. It's the magic plus materia, and what it says is increases max magic by 25%, can only be equipped, or limit cannot exceed 100%. So since you only get like one or two, maybe, like, I'm thinking one magic materia, that means you'll never get near 100%. You know what I'm saying? So unless whatever the next one is, I don't know, it's going to start with RE probably, but we'll maybe be able to share the materia through every slot, and this will be like a 3-disc adventure, the remake trilogy. The mini games in this, they weren't that bad. I've seen a lot worse, and some of them were so easy that playing with them at the beginning is frustrating, but eventually you're like, oh, I can do this. Yeah. So getting the proto relics and all of the stuff for Chadley is the main function of the game. If you're not dealing with story, then you're dealing with Chadley. Chadley wants you to check everything, fight everything, and you know, Cloud's the Boy Scout and does it all. Well, it's not just Cloud in this adventure. It's all of them, because there are scenes where a character won't get to be able to say anything because they're just not in the scene. But it's not like we forget at all anybody. Most of them, their presence is always clear, which is something good, and it's groundbreaking, because everybody always said that, you know, the shifting into Cloud in the OG felt like abnormally possible, or the whole like 99 potions. But they fixed it with Final Fantasy VIII. When you were in towns, your party members would follow you behind. They fixed it in 12. They fixed, well, yeah. But this one, it was just like the best they could do, you know? And the combat, it gets a little frustrating, each boss. The thing about it though is there is 3 modes you can pick right away. Easy, normal, and dynamic. And you can put the game on easy and just enjoy it without any stress level at all. Your stress level probably wouldn't go up unless you get stuck on a mini game. But then there is hard mode, which is later on, where some of these story bosses, they require a certain way of defeating them. I mean, surely you can defeat them with anything, but for one, you can't use potions and any items. So that's off the tables right there. And then it seems like they just dealt way too much damage. At this point, though, when I got to the Junon Parade, I felt 100% confident that this game was the greatest that I've ever played in the recent years. I haven't had this much fun playing Final Fantasy VII since I've played Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation 1. Rebirth and Remake, the way that they displayed it was perfect, because Midgar was kind of sluggish, and you know, it was only 1/10 of the game. Rebirth is easily 6 times the game of Remake, because it's got so many more things that it could have done. And I know when I bought the game, the download patch was incredible. I think it was like 166 to 188 gigabytes. I mean, it's getting close to a terabyte if you add in Remake, integrate. So, yeah. Queen's Blood was done pretty good. Now, I have something against Queen's Blood, and that's the difficulty level. You don't have much difficulty playing Queen's Blood. In fact, that once you defeat one of the players, you can just move on to the next. Now, the Gold Saucer has a place where you can play Queen's Blood, and it's based upon points, like how many points you rack up. And there's a prize at the Gold Saucer that you can get for racking up 200 points. Now that was interesting. Yuffie was one of the most enjoyable characters that I've seen. She got the best personality all the way through it, and I don't know how they did it, but she starts off and she's not really that great of a character, or I just didn't know her from Remake. But then once I found out that she had all those abilities, She ended up becoming an essential for some of the boss fights late in the game. And like I said, the mini games, there are a few exceptions where I'll say the mini games were a little tough, but I'll get there later. The element of the content, the things we get to see, the cutscenes are near perfect, and I am very thankful that they did that justice, because I had a problem with Square for a while where it seemed like they were more focused on making the best looking hair or the best looking butterfly or the a flower, and that went away with Rebirth. And they might think that the world environment might have been downscaled from what they usually do, but this is on par with so much more. This is on par with like 15, except there's more grass. And yeah, there's just so much more about this world than 15's. So with that said, I'm glad that we don't get the most beautiful looking flowers to walk past. That's not a problem, because what they did was balanced it out to where it doesn't make the game so humongous just for small details. They used to care so much between Final Fantasy X and 15 about so much detail that it felt like the games were more, they're like trying to make and they do make a world inside a disc. They could make their own world out of any Final Fantasy game. They just put their mind to it, but hopefully we don't do that. But here is Johnny's quest. And I knew straight away when I seen Treasure's Trove that I was in for a grind, because a lot of the mini games that you do, they unlock a random prize and you won't find it really in your inventory as a usable item. But yep, so we get the Tiny Bronco, which is one of the cool ways to travel around the world because the world's freaking humongous. The whole event from the Calm all the way up until the Temple of Ancients really is how far the game lasts. So if you're wondering, if Disc 1 remake is just Midgar, Rebirth, it has the Grasslands, Junon, Corel, Gongaga, Cosmos Canyon, and Nibelheim, and Temple of Ancients, plus some stuff up north that we won't talk about yet. Now, that's including flashbacks with Zack where you're in Midgar and you see all the details that they put through there. Again, I think it's a little downgraded, but it's so much more acceptable because we got to add much more to the game than a flower that looks better in virtual reality than any flower in real life. I mean, Square makes beautiful stuff, makes beautiful artwork, but there's a moment where adding some more content rather than, all the final details. Rebirth looks beautiful the way it is. The only thing I was fearing was that we would get like a game where you only get to Junon, and boy was I surprised at how much we get. So after the Tiny Bronco, they want to make the High Wind more accessible, they said, and Tiny Bronco is perfectly fine. I had no problems using the Tiny Bronco. And if they just wanted to make the High Wind just like them, it's not really a big deal. The only thing that would make it better is if you could actually press a button and enter the High Wind. and go explore on deck and stuff like that. The Moogles go along with all the mini games. There's only one in each region, so there's a 6 total. There's none in the Temple of the Ancients, so you don't have to worry about that. And the games are easy. You get unlimited tries, no penalties for doing it on easy mode, no bonuses for doing it on hard mode. And all through the game, when they would introduce a new character, they were polite about it. They didn't sit there and make you feel uncomfortable or there was an outcast or anything like that, even though there's moments where they should have. But Sid and Vincent, they were nice little additions, and I don't blame them for not adding them to the game. They wanted to get the game out, and if anything, they should have kept Sephiroth and Zack as playable characters. Again, a new game plus, but we've already been there. And yeah, with all the mini games opened in Chapter 12, you have a choice. Do every mini game perfectly? Well, not perfectly, but you know, you're always allowed a margin of error in the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth mini games. There are some where there's a flying bird. I had a little bit of a trouble with that. Had a little bit of trouble with the piano. Nothing that took me over a couple hours to overcome. I wasn't stuck on a boss. Well, actually I was. So, right here, I was dishing out some mini games, and it wasn't before long where I accidentally just started chapter 13. And at chapter 13, I heard was a point of no return. So I did try to do as many mini games as I could, but I accidentally hit the Tiny Bronco and entered chapter 13, and then I was really curious about how they ended. So I went to see it end. And the moment that everybody comes out of the Temple of Ancients, it's legendary. It's a moment that you wouldn't expect. You didn't see it coming. A moment in history where people felt emotions when you have something dry like Sephiroth sitting there just calmly telling you in the most simplest way to understand what's going on. He's like, there's a multitude of worlds. And you're like, oh, okay, well, so this guy, he's calm, and Sephiroth is over flirtatious in this game. And I think that was a thing that they were wanting to do in the beginning with the original PlayStation X, but Sephiroth scares people in the PlayStation 1 version. He really does. And that's an element that I wasn't having in Rebirth. Maybe in the next one, they introduced that sign, because in the Temple of Ancients, when Sephiroth appeared, I was under the impression that he could just use his sword to kill Cloud right away. And I don't see Sephiroth in a threat when I can fight him in Chadley's virtual reality. I just, he is a threat. He is the final boss, but Sephiroth was toned down in the amount of threat that he imposed. Rufus, still the same, a great character, and a little trivia, if you ever want to know who my favorite Final Fantasy characters are, it's Rufus, Kadaj, Sephiroth, and then probably Cloud. But everybody else is tied for fifth. Now, Aerith, I don't think she's going to be in the third one. I mean, she could be. Don't get me wrong, she could be. But
I'm completely convinced.
what I want to say is that Vincent and Sid they're most definitely going to be in the third one, the third remake of this. And when they do, I hope that they have abilities that could match up to Eris, because yeah, I like that character a lot. But in this game, we got to see Genji equipment, which might not be new for people, but I played all kinds of Final Fantasy. I've never seen a 3D version of it that much. But in the Pearl of Relics, it's all about taking, again, every story Gilgamesh has, it's him getting his precious armor, which is the strongest in all the world, stolen from him. I feel for him now, more in Rebirth than I ever have. And that was cool. Once I got done wrapping up bosses like Are You Not Entertained, and I was getting those trophies, I started to get to the point where the game went hard mode. It did. Okay, these few trophies that are going to be popping up, these were not the easy ones to unlock. And all the way through the end, when we're right here, we're fighting Gilgamesh, which Gilgamesh was hard. At this point, I did put the game on easy just because I was actually tired of new content. It wasn't that it was a bad experience, but it was a lot of experiences. And in order for me to go through the game that was that humongous, I put it on, I watched every cutscene, I tried to do 100% of everything, and Chad Lee is the best materia, underground materia salesman ever, dealer, whatever you want to call him. But yes, this means that his materia is limited. You don't, I think he's the only one that gives limited materia in both Remake and Rebirth. So keep an eye on that in part 3. That Chadley will probably be there. Now Chadley has this thing with Hojo, and in Dirge of Cerberus, Hojo is an AI. The last side quest right here was done and blew me away because this guy took most of the mini games in the Gold Saucer and challenged you to do better than you've ever done before. And that means that I had to pause and study this character's moves because they almost all look alike. But I finally did it. I was able to complete this one. This is one of the ones I had a lot of trouble on. And I was very glad that most of my side quests were now done. So with that out of the way, you guessed it, we have, again, several, not that big of a thread. We had some noble grinding that we had to do. So this was before I even maxed up my materia, but you're gonna hit the max level pretty easily if you're going for the trophies, because it's just gonna be like one of those guaranteed things unless you avoided every encounter throughout the whole game. But yeah, I don't think there's really a way to stay at level 1. But right here, this trophy was the most valuable to me. It's where you gotta be a series of 10 bouts with Sephiroth and Cloud, and then Cloud and Zack. And of course I did Zack first, so Sephiroth was a lot easier. There was only one thing left to do. Well, no, there was 2 things left to do. I had to go and visit Johnny after doing this because he ends up giving us another sheet music, and it's Sephiroth's One-Winged Angel, which you don't have to complete to get perfect. You really don't. The next thing that I had to do was hard mode, and this was, again, once you had the right materia set up, you didn't have much to worry about. And I am saying that as easy as I can. Thank y'all for watching. I got the platinum. I was very, very glad that I
I'll
did.
see you
So
out.
I'll see y'all next time. Have a good day and good night.